What happens when the pillars of faith and family crumble beneath the weight of devastating secrets? How does a man of God, revered by his community, reconcile with a betrayal so profound it threatens to destroy everything he holds dear? In the quiet town of Pineville, Alabama, Pastor Samuel Walker was a beacon of hope, a man whose life was a testament to faith, love, and integrity. But beneath the surface of his seemingly perfect life lay a hidden truth, one that would shatter his world and push him to the brink of darkness. In this harrowing tale, we explore the unraveling of a family built on trust and the catastrophic consequences of betrayal. What drives a man to forsake his principles in the face of unimaginable pain? Can faith survive when tested by the deepest of wounds? And ultimately, where do we draw the line between justice and vengeance? Join us as we delve into the haunting story of Samuel Walker, a man whose journey from faith to fury serves as a chilling reminder of the destructive power of secrets and the fragile nature of trust. Thank you for your continued support. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you won't miss any updates on the latest stories. Pastor Samuel Walker was a beacon of hope in the tight-knit community of Pineville, Alabama. Known for his heartfelt sermons and unwavering commitment to his faith, Samuel had become more than just a pastor. He was a mentor, a confidant, and a moral compass for many in the town. The Walker family, consisting of Samuel, his wife Linda, and their 4 children, Benjamin, Clara, David, and Emily, was seen as a model of virtue and integrity. Together, they embodied the ideals that Samuel preached from the pulpit every Sunday. Samuel had always believed that his calling was to guide others towards a life of righteousness. He took pride in his role, not just as a preacher, but as a community leader. His sermons were not mere recitations of Scripture. They were passionate appeals for compassion, honesty, and unity. He often spoke of the importance of family, using his own life as an example. His stories about his wife and children were woven into his sermons, painting a picture of a man deeply devoted to both his faith and his family. Linda Walker was the perfect partner to Samuel. Her quiet strength and unwavering support were the bedrock of the Walker household. She was deeply involved in church activities, organizing charity drives, leading Bible study groups, and mentoring young women in the community. Despite the demands of her role as a pastor's wife, Linda always made time for her children. The Walker children, Benjamin, Clara, David, and Emily, were bright and well-behaved, each reflecting the values instilled in them by their parents. Benjamin, the eldest at 16, was a thoughtful and responsible young man. He excelled in school and was active in the church youth group, often helping his father with community outreach programs. Clara, 14, was creative and compassionate, with a talent for music that she shared during Sunday services. David, 11, was curious and energetic, always asking questions about the world and eager to learn. Emily, the youngest at 7, was the light of the family, her innocence and joy bringing warmth to their home. The Walker family was not just admired but revered in Pineville. Their home was always open to those in need, and their generosity was well known. Samuel and Linda made it a point to involve their children in their charitable endeavors, teaching them the value of giving back to the community. Whether it was organizing food drives, visiting the sick, or simply offering a listening ear, the Walkers were a constant presence in the lives of those around them. One of the most cherished traditions in the Walker household was the Friday evening family dinner. These gatherings were a time for reflection, connection, and gratitude. They would sit around the large oak dining table, sharing stories from their week and discussing their plans for the future. Samuel would often begin these meals with a prayer, thanking God for their blessings and seeking guidance for the challenges ahead. It was during one of these dinners that the family's seemingly perfect life began to unravel. Benjamin, who was working on a school project about genealogy, suggested that the entire family take DNA tests to explore their ancestry. His excitement was infectious, and his siblings quickly joined in, speculating about what they might discover. Samuel, ever supportive of his children's interests, agreed wholeheartedly, seeing it as a fun and educational activity. However, Linda's reaction was different. While she smiled and encouraged the idea, those who knew her well might have noticed a flicker of unease in her eyes. She quickly masked her discomfort, attributing her hesitation to concerns about privacy. Samuel, unaware of the turmoil beneath her composed exterior, dismissed her worries and reassured her that it would be a harmless family activity. As the conversation shifted back to lighter topics, Linda's mind was elsewhere. The DNA tests represented more than just a school project. They were a Pandora's box that threatened to reveal long-buried secrets. She knew that once the results came in, their lives could be changed forever. The weight of that knowledge pressed heavily on her, but she kept her fears hidden, hoping against hope that the past would remain in the past. Samuel, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, continued to lead his family with the same confidence and conviction that had always defined him. He was proud of the life they had built together, a life rooted in faith, love, and trust. He believed that their bond was unbreakable, that their shared values would see them through any challenge. Little did Samuel know that the foundations of his world were about to be shaken in ways he could never have imagined. The DNA tests, meant to be a light-hearted exploration of their ancestry, would soon reveal a truth so devastating that it would test the very core of his faith and the strength of his family. As the evening wore on and the family laughter echoed through the house, Linda's heart was heavy with a secret she had carried for far too long. She looked around the table at her children, at her husband, and felt a pang of guilt and fear. The love and trust they shared were precious, but she knew that the truth, once revealed, could shatter everything they held dear. For now, though, the Walkers remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to descend upon their lives. They continued to live their lives, rooted in faith and guided by love, unaware that the perfect image they presented to the world was about to be forever altered. The Walker family had always placed immense value on togetherness. Their bond was not only reinforced by shared faith, but also by cherished family traditions that kept them close. One of the most significant of these traditions was their weekly Friday night dinners at Samuel's childhood home, where his father, Frank Walker, still resided. These gatherings were more than just meals. They were sacred rituals that brought the family together, offering a moment of respite from their busy lives. Frank Walker was a man of great influence in Samuel's life. A retired preacher, Frank had spent decades serving the community with the same fervor and dedication that Samuel now demonstrated. His reputation as a wise and compassionate leader had left an indelible mark on Pineville, and his legacy was carried forward through his son. To Samuel, Frank was more than a father. He was a mentor, guide, and a symbol of unwavering faith. At these Friday dinners, the Walkers would gather around the large oak table in Frank's dining room, a table that had seen countless family gatherings over the years. The room, adorned with photographs and mementos of a life dedicated to faith and family, was filled with the warmth of shared history. Frank always began the evening with a prayer, his deep voice resonating with conviction as he gave thanks for their blessings and sought guidance for the future. The atmosphere at these dinners was one of warmth and unity. Conversations flowed easily, ranging from light-hearted banter to deeper discussions about faith, community, and personal growth. Samuel often took the opportunity to share stories from his own life, weaving lessons of morality and spirituality into the narratives. His children listened intently, their eyes reflecting admiration for their father's wisdom. Frank, though retired, remained an active participant in these discussions. His insights, drawn from years of experience, added depth to their conversations. He would often share anecdotes from his time as a preacher, emphasizing the importance of integrity, humility, and compassion. These stories served as a reminder of the values that had been passed down through generations of the Walker family. Linda, ever the gracious hostess, would ensure that everyone felt comfortable and cared for. She would prepare the meals with love, taking pride in creating dishes that brought joy to her family. Her presence at the table was a steadying force, her quiet strength and gentle demeanor fostering an environment of peace and harmony. Benjamin, the eldest of the Walker children, often took on the role of the responsible older brother during these gatherings. He would help set the table, engage his younger siblings in conversation, and occasionally assist his grandfather with tasks around the house. Clara, with her artistic flair, would sometimes bring her guitar and serenade the family with songs, adding a musical touch to the evening. David, full of youthful curiosity, would pepper his grandfather with questions about his past, eager to learn more about the man who had played such a pivotal role in shaping their family's legacy. Emily, the youngest, despite the light-hearted atmosphere, these dinners were also moments of reflection and introspection. Samuel would often use the opportunity to check in with each of his children, asking about their week, their challenges, and their triumphs. He believed that open communication was key to maintaining a strong family bond, and these dinners provided the perfect setting for such conversations. However, beneath the surface of these idyllic gatherings lay unspoken tensions. Linda, though outwardly composed, carried the weight of a secret that threatened to disrupt the harmony of their family. She would occasionally catch herself lost in thought, her mind racing with the fear of what could happen if the truth were ever revealed. These moments of introspection were fleeting, quickly masked by a forced smile or a change in subject. Samuel, ever the observant husband, occasionally noticed these moments of unease. He attributed them to the pressures of managing a household and being the wife of a pastor, a demanding role that required constant strength and resilience. He often reassured Linda, reminding her of the importance of faith and trust in overcoming life's challenges. As the evening progressed, the family would move from the dining room to the living room, where they would gather around the fireplace for a time of storytelling and reflection. Frank would recount tales from his younger days, Samuel would share anecdotes from his ministry, and the children would eagerly listen, their eyes wide with wonder. These moments were sacred to Samuel. They were a testament to the strength of their family, a reminder of the love and support that bound them together. He took comfort in knowing that despite the challenges of life, they had each other. His faith in the sanctity of family was unshakable, rooted in the belief that their bond was a reflection of God's love. But Linda knew that this foundation, seemingly unbreakable, was built on fragile ground. The secret she harbored threatened to unravel everything they had worked so hard to build. Each passing Friday dinner brought her closer to the inevitable moment when the truth would surface, and she prayed for the strength to face it when it did. However, Linda's anxiety only grew. She found herself retreating into her thoughts, her usual warmth replaced by a quiet tension. Samuel noticed the change, but attributed it to the stress of daily life. As days turned into weeks, the results finally arrived. The children were thrilled, gathering around the computer as Samuel logged into the website to view the findings. The room buzzed with anticipation as they explored their ancestral origins, marveling at the diverse heritage revealed by the reports. But as Samuel delved deeper into the data, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Wait a minute," he murmured, his eyes scanning the screen. This doesn't make sense. According to this, I'm not a genetic match with any of you as your biological father. It must be a mistake, some kind of mix-up in the database. The children exchanged puzzled glances while Linda froze in place, her worst fears realized. Her heart pounded in her chest as Samuel continued to examine the results, his initial amusement giving way to concern. "I'll contact the company," Samuel said firmly, trying to maintain his composure. "They must have mixed up the samples. I'll get it sorted out." Linda remained silent, her mind a whirlwind of panic and dread. She knew there was no mistake. The truth she had fought so hard to suppress was now out in the open, and there was no turning back. The facade she had maintained for so long was crumbling, and the consequences of her deception loomed large. Samuel, ever the optimist, tried to reassure his family. "Don't worry, everyone, this will get straightened out. It's probably just a clerical error." But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. As he watched Linda's pale face and trembling hands, a nagging feeling of unease began to take root. Something was amiss, and he couldn't shake the sense that their lives were about to change forever. The days following the arrival of the DNA results were filled with an uneasy silence. Samuel had contacted the testing company, convinced that a mistake had been made. But as he waited for their response, the tension in the Walker household grew palpable. Linda's anxiety had reached its peak, and she struggled to maintain her composure in front of the children. "The DNA company confirmed the results," Samuel said, his voice low and steady. "They're not a mistake. The children's biological father is someone within our family. It's Frank, isn't it?" Linda's face turned ashen, her worst fears realized. She opened her mouth to speak but found herself unable to form the words. Tears welled up in her eyes as she nodded slowly, her body trembling with the weight of the confession. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's Frank." Samuel's fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tightening as he fought to control the anger boiling within him. "How could you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "How could you let this happen? Why didn't you tell me?" Linda's tears flowed freely now as she tried to explain. "It wasn't like that," she sobbed. "Frank, he manipulated me, coerced me. I didn't know how to stop it. I was scared, Samuel. I was scared of what it would do to our family, to you." Samuel's mind raced with a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, disbelief. The woman he had loved and trusted, the mother of his children, had been living with a secret so dark and painful that it threatened to destroy everything they had built together. "You should have told me," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "We could have faced it together, but instead you chose to keep it from me, to let me believe in a lie." Linda reached out to him, desperate to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. "I was trying to protect you, to protect our family," she pleaded. "I didn't want to hurt you, Samuel. I never wanted any of this to happen." Samuel pulled away, his heart heavy with sorrow and rage. "You've destroyed everything, Linda," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything we had, everything we stood for. It's all gone." With that, he turned and left the kitchen, leaving Linda sobbing in the aftermath of their confrontation. As he walked back into the living room, his mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. The children looked up at him, sensing the tension but unsure of its cause. For the rest of the evening, Samuel remained distant, lost in thought. He knew that the revelation had irrevocably changed their lives, and there was no going back to the way things were. The trust he had placed in his father, in his wife, had been shattered, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. That night, as he lay in bed beside Linda, the silence between them was deafening. The love and connection they had once shared seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a chasm of betrayal and pain. Samuel stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, his mind racing with questions and doubt. One evening, after much internal struggle, Samuel decided it was time to confront Frank. He needed answers, clarity, and perhaps closure. He couldn't move forward without understanding how and why his father had done this. With resolve, he left the house and drove to Frank's home, the place where so many cherished family memories had been made, now tainted by the knowledge of his betrayal. Frank greeted Samuel at the door, his expression a mix of surprise and apprehension. He could sense that this was no ordinary visit. Inviting him in, Frank gestured for Samuel to sit, but Samuel remained standing, his posture tense and rigid. "I know everything," Samuel said, his voice low but firm. "Linda told me about what you did." Frank's face paled, and he sat down heavily in his chair, the weight of his son's words pressing down on him. For a moment he said nothing, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. Then finally he spoke, his voice heavy with regret. "I didn't mean for things to happen the way they did," Frank began, his eyes avoiding Samuel's. "It was a mistake, a terrible, unforgivable mistake. I've lived with the guilt for years, but I didn't know how to fix it." Samuel's anger flared, his fists clenching at his sides. "A mistake?" he repeated, his voice rising. "You betrayed me, Frank. You betrayed your own son, your family. How could you do that? How could you sit at our table, look me in the eye, and pretend everything was fine? Frank bowed his head, his hands trembling. "I was weak," he admitted. "I let my desires cloud my judgment, and I hurt the people I love the most. I've tried to atone for it in my own way, but I know it's not enough. I know I've lost your trust, and I don't deserve your forgiveness." Samuel shook his head, his emotions a storm of rage and sorrow. "You've destroyed everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Our family, our faith, our trust. It's all gone. And for what? For a moment of weakness? I trusted you, Frank. I looked up to you, and you threw it all away." Frank finally met his son's gaze, his eyes filled with remorse. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Samuel," he said quietly. "I know what I did is unforgivable. All I can say is that I'm sorry, and I'll carry this guilt for the rest of my life." The words, though heartfelt, did little to soothe the pain in Samuel's heart. The betrayal was too deep, the wound too fresh. He stood there, staring at the man who had once been his hero, now reduced to a figure of regret and shame. Without another word, Samuel turned and left, the door closing behind him with a finality that echoed in the quiet house. As he drove, the confrontation had provided no closure, only a confirmation of the devastating truth. His family's foundation had been built on lies, and now it lay in ruins. Back at home, Linda waited anxiously, her heart pounding as she heard the car pull into the driveway. She had spent the evening praying for strength, for guidance, and for the possibility of healing. As Samuel entered the house, their eyes met, and for a moment there was a flicker of understanding between them, a shared pain, a shared loss. But the road to reconciliation was long and fraught with challenges. The trust that had been shattered could not be easily mended. Both Samuel and Linda knew that their journey was only beginning, and the path ahead would be filled with difficult choices and painful truths. As they sat in the silence of their home, the weight of their shared burden pressing down on them, they could only hope that, in time, they would find a way to rebuild what had been lost. For now, they were left to navigate the wreckage of their once perfect life, searching for a way forward in the midst of their deepest pain. The days following Samuel's confrontation with Frank were marked by an overwhelming sense of isolation. The once strong and united Walker family now seemed fractured beyond repair. Samuel struggled with a whirlwind of emotions: betrayal, anger, sorrow, and confusion. His once unshakable faith was now riddled with doubts. How could a man of God, his own father, commit such an unforgivable act? And how could Linda, the woman he had trusted most, keep such a devastating secret? Samuel withdrew from his duties at the church, unable to stand before his congregation and preach about the virtues of honesty and forgiveness when his own life was steeped in deceit. The community noticed his absence and whispered among themselves, speculating about the reasons behind their pastor's sudden withdrawal. The idea of confronting his father again began to take root, but this time it was not for answers. Samuel felt a growing need to make Frank pay for the pain he had caused, to reclaim some sense of control over the chaos that had consumed his life. The thought of vengeance became a dark comfort, offering a semblance of relief from the storm of emotions that raged within him. On a cold, quiet evening, Samuel made his decision. With a heavy heart and a mind clouded by rage, he drove to Frank's house. The town was cloaked in darkness, and the streets were deserted as he approached the familiar home that now felt alien to him. His hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel, but his resolve remained unshaken. Samuel entered the house without knocking, finding Frank in the living room, reading his Bible. The sight of his father, engrossed in Scripture, fueled Samuel's anger. Without a word, he lunged forward, the rage that had been building for months finally finding its outlet. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Frank tried to defend himself, but Samuel's fury was unstoppable. The violence escalated, and in a fit of uncontrollable rage, Samuel committed an act he would have never thought himself capable of. The man who had once been a beacon of light in the community now stood over his father's lifeless body, his hands stained with blood. The news of Frank's death spread rapidly through Pineville, sending shockwaves through the small community. The once revered pastor had committed an unthinkable crime, and the town was left grappling with the horrifying truth. The church, which had been a sanctuary for many, became a place of whispered conversations and hushed disbelief. Samuel turned himself in, his confession devoid of emotion. He recounted the events with a cold detachment, his voice steady as he detailed the act of vengeance that had consumed him. The police, though shocked by the nature of the crime, treated him with the same procedure they would any other criminal, their respect for him as a community leader now overshadowed by his actions. Linda was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered life. She faced the community's judgment alone, her once respected position as the pastor's wife now a source of scorn and pity. The children were taken into custody by social services, their future uncertain as they grappled with the loss of their family and the dark legacy of their father's actions. Samuel's trial became a national spectacle, drawing attention to the tragic story of a man who had once been a pillar of faith, now fallen from grace. The courtroom was filled with journalists, curious onlookers, and members of the community, all eager to witness the outcome of this harrowing tale. The defense portrayed Samuel as a man driven to the brink by unimaginable betrayal, while the prosecution focused on the premeditated nature of the crime. The jury, tasked with navigating the complex emotions and moral dilemmas presented by the case, ultimately found Samuel guilty of first-degree murder. If you enjoyed this dive into the mystery, don't forget to subscribe to True Crime OCS for more chilling stories from history's darkest corners. Drop your thoughts, theories, and questions in the comments below. Let's untangle the truth together. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.